Hello everybody, welcome back to Random Vids. So, I know, last time I said I was gonna do a Mario Party 5 video on the best minigames. I want to do that, I really do, trust me, but I need to find time. I have work, my friends always come over, I have school, I have to balance everything, if you know what I mean. The only time I have time is usually Sunday, and of course, everyone's inside. I'm not going to do a Mario Party 5 video on my own game console when someone is in the house in that same room as well. No, sorry. Um, so instead we're going to do something else. Let's do another ranking video. How about that? This time, I think I should rank all 19 episodes of Pup Academy. So if you haven't heard of Pup Academy, basically it's a show on Netflix about these adorable puppies going to just a puppy school. It's by Air Bud Entertainment. They're the same ones who made Pup Star and all the Air Buddies and all that stuff. So, little history. Pup Academy was filmed sometime in 2019. I started watching it back around September-ish of 2020. I really liked it. I'm addicted to the show. They did such a good job with the show. Obviously it's Air Bud Entertainment, so there is a few cringy moments, but not as bad as Pup Star. And overall, Pup Academy is probably better than Pup Star too. I'm not saying any of the shows are bad. They did a good job, but yeah. And also, before we go on to this countdown, I just want to say every single actor did a good job in Pup Academy. Whether I like the character or hate the character in Pup Academy, all the actors did a good job. All of them. So, yeah. I hope you all enjoy this random ranking of the Pup Academy episodes. As I said, there's 19 of them. So, I hope you all enjoy. So, let's get started. And now, number 19, and my personal least favorite Pup Academy episode is... Oh, yeah, right, I'm so sorry everybody. I forgot to mention. This will not be a video film thing. If you remember, last year I tried to rank every single Season 1 of Bluey. That didn't end up going well. I tried uploading it, nothing would upload. So, it's because I used actual film. So I guess I don't want the same situation to happen, so this is all just going to be images, alright? Like I did with Pup Star. It's just all going to be images, no videos. I don't want to have to delete the video that never got uploaded to YouTube. Anyway, so sorry about that. Sorry if you got disappointed. But no clips, it's just going to be images. Anyway, number 19, the worst Pup Academy episode is... The Constellation Fades. So this is episode 13. And I'm just gonna downright say, I honestly do not like Spark. Overall, she seems like a really whiny, spoiled brat at school. And overall, she is easily the worst puppy out of all the Pup Academy characters. Nothing against her breed, against her voice actor. It's just that I don't like that character. I don't like what they did with her, if you know what I mean. I don't mind her being a stray and all, but the way she just acts so spoiled, and, oh, I'm the best, I'm up here, you guys are down here. So, it obviously loses a lot of points there. What's nice about this episode is I think it's the only episode that doesn't have Spark in it. Hooray! So you guys are gonna hear me rant about Spark a lot, because I honestly don't like her. They did a pretty poor job when it came to the main character, but it is what it is. So, this image I have is currently one in the Constellation Fades. Why do I hate an episode so much if Spark isn't in it? Here's the thing. They did a poor job with this episode. So, the last episode, episode 12, Spark gets expelled from school, and then it's pretty much just life without the school. It honestly is so stupid. I don't like the concept at all. And this is called Pup Academy, right? Well, eventually everyone starts hating dogs, so instead they get cats. Nothing against cats, but obviously they're not as good as dogs. So it starts off with Charlie and DOG selling the school, and then all the pups then some of the pups, just for some reason, then don't have humans anymore, which is odd. Oh yeah, and by some of them, I mean all of them. And then Charlie has to find a new job, so he ends up working at Morgan's school, and also living in Morgan's house, so that's something. Charlie then ends up getting fired from school because he picks up a dog, who, of course, needs adopted. And then he pretty much just gets arrested for walking the dog. Okay. Meanwhile, the two main pups, Corazon and Wiz, end up being humanless, or homeless, whatever. And then some of the other characters like Roddy, Mullet, George, and Pom Pom, whatever, end up getting captured by animal control, and then the whole thing just kind of ends. Or does it? Well, what happens is that it ends up just being a dream. And for some reason, all three, Charlie, Corazon, and Roddy, all had the same dream for some reason, which doesn't make any sense. So you start thinking about it, and the way this episode works, it feels like it was a last-minute idea type of thing. Especially since it all ends up being a dream. It's like, well then, what's the point of this episode? I'm here to watch Pup Academy to see these cute little puppies just walk around and do their daily lives, not to see some sort of school closure and see the pups' lives after that. What? I hated this episode the first time I saw it, and I still hate it now. But this, I want to say, is better than the fourth Pup Star movie. So hooray for being better than something, I guess. But if I'm ranking all Pup Academy episodes, this one is easily the most boring and just the most pointless episode ever. Alright, so we got this episode done over with. Let's move on to number 18, which is The Valuable Pup, episode 18. Kind of like the last episode, yet again, this episode feels like it does not have a purpose, which is sad. All that happens is that the pups play fetchball. Hooray! That's literally just the second half of the first episode. Why would they make that a full episode? And what happens, you may ask? They play fetchball. There's just nothing else to it. Aside from the fact that the whole time Spark and Bite are just bickering and bickering. Bite is supposed to be the main, I guess, bully of Pup Academy, but he works kind of different. You see, Bite is this cute little chihuahua, and looking at him, he looks extremely adorable. Also, especially since I don't like Spark, I'm rooting for Bite here. I just don't like Spark. I'm sorry. I like literally any other dog, but not Spark. Like I said, just don't like her personality. What's even sadder is that the last, 2.5-ish episodes, Spark and Bite were actually getting along. It was actually really interesting and much better than this. And, of course, it's a Spark center of attention episode, so it has to be one of the worser ones as well. So anyway, this is how Bite works. He's technically the bully, but as I said, he's really cute, and also, only sometimes he's the bully. Other times, he's just acting like a normal old student, like any other student would act. He acts kind of like Judo from Bluey, except I don't really like Judo that much. But here's the thing, Bluey does a good job with all their characters, so of course the bully's going to be the worst. Pup Academy, on the other hand, I don't like Spark that much, or any of the villains, so Bite is much better. Like I said, overall, it's pretty much just it's just the second half of the first episode where they're just playing fetchball. Except it's even worse because I feel like it doesn't even have a point. Like, what's the moral of this episode? Don't fight during fetchball? It seems really odd, and overall, this episode seems very lazy. They could have done so much more with this instead of just fetchball the whole time. And don't get me wrong, it's cute to see the games that they play, but fetchball again for the 50th time and for a full 20-minute episode? I don't think so. However, there are actually two scenes that I do like. I like how Wiz gets over his fear of the balls and actually picks up, or not the balls, but just the toys in general, and actually picks one up and scores the goal and he ends up being, I guess, the valuable pup. And by the end of this episode, I am done with pretty much all the characters. Except for Wiz, because he literally just did nothing the whole episode except encourage his team. And then you have Spark, on the other hand, who is trying just to do it herself and just be a stupid idiot. I also like the scene where Molly, Morgan's mom, comes to Pup Academy to see the dogs. That was a really cool scene as well. Other than that, this episode sucks, and it's easily the second worst episode. It's only 20 minutes, not 40 minutes, so it's one of the better ones. It's not the better one, it's one of the worst ones, sorry. Let's move on to number 17, which is this episode. I don't remember all the names, so this one I'm just going to call the Cat episode. If you remember when I was talking about the constellation fades, one thing I didn't like about the episode is how everyone just decided to get cats instead of dogs. That felt lazily made, and overall I just hated it, so yeah. But guess what? There's not only one cat episode, but there's two of them. This one was episode 8, and it's pretty much just the pups getting along with cats, more so Corazon. And because Corazon doesn't get along with cats, he then gets sent to, Kitten Academy. Of course they had to have cats in their dog show. They just cannot have cats out of it. Why do they do that? Well, it is what it is. I mean, at least it isn't too terribly boring, but it's still not the best. It's still not one I go back to watch. I also hated all of the new characters they had in this one, like the headmistress and Zipper, and honestly, just pretty much any of the new characters that they had in this episode. Pretty much almost every single episode, there's a new character, whether that's Dude, Oopsie, Clark and Lou, whatever. The cats are easily my least favorite. Overall, if you like cats, then this is your episode. If you hate cats, I recommend you stay away from this episode. I did, however, like the Corazon becoming one with the cat, but they should focus more on Corazon becoming one with the cat rather than Spark's relationship with the cat. Because if you know, I don't like Spark that much, so of course this has to be another Spark Center of Attention episode. Sort of. Well, here's the thing. These 3 episodes are the worst episodes of Pup Academy. Thank God we got the 3 worst ones done and over with. After these 3, the episodes still aren't the best, but they become better. So let's move on to number 16, which is Spark Gets Expelled, aka episode 12. This is the episode before the worst episode ever, the Constellation Fades. Ugh. Honestly, I don't mind Spark getting expelled just because I really hate her, but I just don't like how this episode went. If you know me, I like happy endings. I don't like the ones that just leave off kind of like on a cliffhanger. And of course, this episode sort of does that. Actually, it doesn't sort of, it does do that. And then you would think after this episode they would, I don't know, explain more about in the next episode. Nope, it's just pretty much a waste of space. Anyway, this episode wasn't bad. Pretty much just all the scenes where I feel like, I don't know, anything that has to deal with Spark. Honestly, DOG is probably my second least favorite dog, minus the villains. But overall, he just seems like a pretty bland and boring character. This episode is probably the worst that he's in. He doesn't let Spark explain herself, and just pretty much just expels her from the spot. It takes them till episode 14 to finally listen to her. Yes, I know, I'm actually standing up for Spark for once, but honestly, even if you don't like Spark, you would too. It's so obnoxious if you watch it. So Spark is working with the Lost Dogs, and because the Lost Dogs helped her out, now they want Spark to help them out, and that is lead them into Pup Academy so then they can, I don't know, quote-unquote revisit the place. But of course, being King and Head and Tail, they end up just destroying the place. And then that's how Spark gets, expelled. I've been talking really negative about this episode so far, but it wasn't all that bad. Like, for example, when King is in Pup Academy and has his flashbacks, we see a cute little German Shepherd just being in school. Honestly, King is so adorable as a pup. And what's even funnier is that the voice actor who voiced, young King is the same person who voiced Zipper in the episode Cats. I also liked the dog catcher scenes with Clark and Lou. Honestly, Clark and Lou are some of my favorite characters in the show. They did such a good job, and they're overall just so hilarious together. Like I said, this episode isn't the best, but it's better than the ones we've talked about. Now, let's go on to number 14, which is The Stray's First Day. Oh yeah, the very first episode of Pup Academy. Honestly, it's done pretty well, but why is it not one of the best? You guessed it, because the center of attention is on Spark. And then we get to learn about some of the other dogs and stuff like that too, like Bite and Roddy, and then George and Mullet, and then Corzine and Wiz. It's the first episode, and you know how it's all gonna work. The first half of the episode is alright, but the second half, honestly, isn't the best. As I already said, it's literally just them playing fetchball. Woohoo. It's the first time, though, so that's one thing. And it's overall pretty interesting, but yeah, I don't know. And honestly, Spark is kind of rude, and by kind of rude, I mean very rude, to Wiz and Corzine the first time she meets them. Of course she is. She's Spark, the spoiled... whatever. I don't care. I don't know anymore. I hate Spark. Now you know. I already said that I hated the villains as well, so of course I hate Fitz. Overall, he's just a very stubborn, greedy man. Dog. Whatever. This episode was so boring that the first time I watched it, I just skipped through some of the episode. I mean, there isn't really any, like, big, terrible moments in this episode, but being the first episode, it's 40 minutes, and it can get really slow and boring at times. Not the worst thing ever, and this episode does have Clark and Lou in it, but other than that, I would probably give it a skip. Now let's move on to number 13, which is... oh yeah, and I'm sorry. By number 13, I mean number 14. This one's number 15. Anyway, number 14 would go to... Spark's Home, I guess. I don't know. That's what I'm calling it. Anyway, that's episode 2. So this is the one where instead of learning about the school, everyone now wants to learn about their children. Everything about this episode is so much better than the first one. I don't know. Maybe it's because... I don't know. It's not as long. We don't see as many stupid things like Spark versus Bite and all the other pointless filler stuff. I think it's kind of silly how Spark makes up stories of how Clark and Lou are his, I guess, parents. And of course they're in this episode, so yeah. Need I say more? Also, ignore that I just called Spark a him. It's kind of funny because I actually used to think that Spark was a boy at first until this episode. But anyway, this is when Spark gets the Lost Dogs to help her out in a little situation. And that situation is when Wiz and Corzine get caught by animal control. So then King and the group all help her out. But that's when the Paw Pact happens, as they call it, and so then Spark needs to repay him sometime, I guess. And then this is the episode that Spark admits to Wiz and Corzine that she's a stray. Yet again, another pointless Spark being center of the tension episode, but it's done better than the last one. And overall, we're getting to the episodes that can get tolerable, and I can rewatch more. This one starts it off. Anyway, let's move on to number 13, which is... The Stray's Last Day, episode 19. They honestly did a better job with the finale than they did with the intro. This is like the complete opposite of Pupstar, since I really hated the fourth movie and I really loved the first movie. Let's get the obvious worst thing out of the way. Spark is the center of attention. But in a good way. They did a really good job finishing things up, making the finale really good. So to quickly summarize this up, Wolf and Fitz are trying to take over the school, so they try to break in with all the Wolf Gang, I guess if you want to call it that. So what happens is that Charlie, Morgan, and then later Izzy set up traps from pretty much at least one trap from at least every single episode to stop them all. Which not only makes it entertaining, but actually kind of makes it really hilarious. And what also makes it hilarious, actually, I lost my train of thought, I'm sorry. I also really like how they went with this episode. Like, whenever Spark says, alright, I need to go and help, the one who actually helps her out is actually Bite. He opens a vent for her and says, good luck, Spark. See, this is why Bite shouldn't be the bully. Because Spark is. And this is what I mean by him being like a mixed between sometimes being a bully and sometimes he's not a bully. Once, Morgan thinks that Spark is dead, they end up bonding, Spark, I guess, isn't dead, and they end up sort of defeating Wolf, which is the one thing I don't really understand. All the meanwhile, Izzy and Morgan are putting on a play at school where the principal, yet again another one of the most hilarious characters in the show, tries to put on a play, and of course it ends up going really hilarious. And guess what? Spark isn't astray anymore at the end of this episode. He ends up living with Morgan. This episode does a perfect job tying in the knots. What don't I like about this episode? Well, Spark is the center of attention, again. She honestly is probably the least annoying in this episode, though. Overall, if I'm ranking all the episodes, this one isn't my favorite, but it's done really well. This is how you know they did their homework when it came to Pup Academy. Not much else I have to say. Now, let's move on to number 12, which is Spark Wants Back. This is episode 14. This is what episode 13 should have been. So what happens is that Spark wants back. I think that he ends up finding Morgan, so Morgan sneaks her off to school. Then she gets into a little bit of trouble. Morgan then goes to the principal's office, which leads to another funny principal episode. And then King and the group come in because they get orders from Fitz to capture Spark. But then the principal finds them and calls the animal control, aka Clark and Lou. So this is one of the two episodes that both Clark and Lou and the principal are in. A+ for me already! And eventually, everyone just ends up leaving the school because of Morgan. And then they end up going to Pup Academy again to tell Charlie everything that's happened. And then they finally fire Fitz. This is like episode 12 and 13, but actually good. Spark wasn't too annoying. The whole episode was pretty interesting. And overall, I liked this episode. And finally, someone actually was listening to the people who are actually right. It honestly was so frustrating. Now, thank God, we finally have something going on. It's kind of strange how it all worked, because we had the first episode, which was a main episode. Then we had a bunch of side episodes where this was my day at Pup Academy today. Then we had episode 12 through 14, which was more like main story mode. And then we had 15 through 18, which is just more every day at Pup Academy. And then 19 was like the main thing to wrap it all up. And because, I guess, Fitz didn't help King out then, King ends up turning against Fitz, and guess what? King and the group end up turning good. So from here on out, they end up helping out, including in the last episode, which I forgot to talk about. Overall, pretty good episode with not a lot of things wrong, except for the fact that Spark's the main character again. Woohoo! Let's move on to number 11, which is Oopsie. This is the first episode that Spark finally is in center of attention. It's actually Corazon. I think we've talked about every single, main episode. Now it's more of the side episodes. More like, oh, this was my day at school type of thing, instead of more of the storyline episode, if you know what I mean. So in this episode, Corazon's neighbor, Oopsie, who ends up following him to school, and then they pretty much just have to hide her throughout the school. Or hide her from people in the school, if you know what I mean. So then, Corazon doesn't get caught and doesn't get expelled. The only minus I have about this episode is that Oopsie is a little annoying, and I don't really like Headmistress Gruff in this episode. Other than that, I really do enjoy this episode. It finally isn't a Spark center of attention episode, hooray! Instead it's just about the goofy, cute, golden Corazon, hooray! Overall, it's a pretty good episode, and it's a better one. Now, we have finally made it to the top 10. Number 10 would go to Izzy Gets Busy, episode 7. So, what happens in this episode? Honestly, there's a decent amount going on. So, Charlie and DOG are out for the day. What are they doing? Honestly, they're doing a whole bunch of really silly things. Charlie is trying to get DOG to the vet so then he can get this thorn or whatever out of his paw. And then DOG is trying to take Charlie to the dentist so then he can get his tooth fixed. So they're trying to, I guess, quote unquote, have fun, but also try to make them want to go at the same time, like, oh, do you want to walk on these nice rocks? Or, oh, do you want to eat this ice cream? This is one of the only episodes that DOG is actually funny in, and I actually like him in this episode a lot. All the while, Izzy is starting to get suspicious of what Corazon is doing all day. Forgot to say who Izzy was. Izzy's Corazon's owner. Anyway, she's getting suspicious of what Corazon is doing all day. So she ends up going to Pup Academy and finding Pup Academy. And then Morgan finds Izzy at Pup Academy. He's like, what are you doing here? Which is silly. Izzy then tries to film it all on her camera. Morgan wants her to delete it. She does eventually delete it, realizing how special the school actually is. And then, even though Charlie and DOG didn't know that she came, Morgan does, and it takes them till episode 10 to figure that out. Overall, pretty interesting. I like the episode. It isn't the best, but it's a better one. I mean, I don't really have words for these episodes since these are more the in-the-middle type of episodes, also more the side episodes. So, yeah, I'm sorry if I'm not talking too much about the episodes. You probably don't care, though. Let's move on to number 9, which is Into the Wildwood. This is good old episode 9, and hey, it's at number 9. Isn't that silly? I'm sure no one is laughing right now. Anyway, so this episode is more interesting than you would imagine. Kind of like Most Valuable Pup, they're pretty much just playing one single game, which can sound annoying, but they did a much better job with this episode. So all the main pups are finding lost items and returning them, I guess. Which ends up being really hilarious because then because Corazon and Bite end up getting paired up together. So then Bite's like, alright, let's just wait for items to come to us, and then we'll steal them, I guess. Which, even though it's not the nicest, it's the first, main nice episode that Bite is in. And then Roddy and Wiz end up stealing stuff inside of Charlie's, little shack he has, which then leads to people like Mullet and Pom Pom doing it, which ends up being hilarious. Speaking of which, I really love Mullet. He's such an adorable little pup. I mean, just look at him. He's a half Chihuahua, half Terrier, I guess. And it's funny because the poor thing tries not to be loud, but all he does is just scream. So, any episode with him in it is automatically a big plus. All the while, Spark is trying to find Morgan in, I guess, the Wildwood, which ends up being the Wildwood. Spark tries to find Morgan. Morgan ends up going to the Wildwood, which of course Spark follows. The Wildwood is used for some of the more main episodes like 19, 14, and even ones like the Oopsie episode as well. So Morgan and Spark actually work together in this episode. And this is the first episode that we actually see Wolf in. And who's Wolf? The main villain. The worst character in Pup Academy, because he's the villain. Overall, I actually didn't mind Spark in this episode. She actually wasn't too annoying. Not just her, but all the other characters were fine as well. This is a really good one. It's one of the better ones. Let's move on to number 8, which is another episode that I forget the title of, so we call it the hot dog episode. What is the hot dog episode, you may ask? Well, I'll tell you in a minute. Basically, Spark has a rough day at school, so then she teams up with King to just eat hot dogs. Which ends up being another annoying Spark episode. But at least it's not boring, so that's why it's better than the Wildwood one. Yet again, another Spark Zone Attention episode. But why is this one better, you may ask? Well, it has, yet again, both Clark and Lou and the principal in it. Like I said before, the principal's one of my favorite characters in the show, and both her and Clark and Lou are in this episode. So anyway, the dogs end up coming because Morgan is making hot dogs for the school. So, him and the principal ends up pushing the cart stand out to the, football field. All the while, Spark and King and the group are watching them and then eventually try to steal the hot dogs from them. Morgan ends up going on the trash can nearby, and Principal just stands up on the hot dog stand. Once Clark and Lou come, Clark ends up helping the principal off of the stand, and they both kind of make a, "Oh, okay, thank you. Now I'm just going to continue doing what we were doing." And Spark ends up helping Morgan out. So the first sign of Spark not minding humans, I guess. It's sad to see Spark having so many stupid center of attention episodes because she's so obnoxious. At least the episode was decent overall. It was pretty good, actually. I liked it. Let's move on to number 7, which is Dude. That's literally what the episode's called. Dude. From episode 5. What is it about? It's about Dude. A dude. Anyway, Corazon is in love with Pom Pom, which is so hilariously cute. So Corazon tells Pom Pom that Dude is his uncle. So Spark ends up having to find a, I guess, fake dog that looks like Dude, which ends up being Rico, I guess. And by the time Rico's in school, guess who comes? None other than Dude himself. So it's funny because then like, wait, there's Dude over there and there's Rico over there, and then Morgan gets confused. It's all, this episode is all over the place, and I love it. The ending is really good too when Corazon admits that Dude is not his uncle and he was only doing it to impress Pom Pom. And then because Rico, I guess, sort of beat up Dude gave him a nice payback and pretty much just used Rico as a stunt double in a new movie coming up. I also like the prank war between Morgan and Charlie. It's so hilarious, and it's just, overall, this is a good episode for sure. What's next? Number 6, which is, guess what, another episode that I forget the name of. This is episode 4, so if you know the name, then congratulations, because I don't. So in this episode, Morgan is trying to balance life between school and Pup Academy. What's silly is that this is the first episode with the principal in it. So what happens in this episode, you may ask? So Charlie gets injured, so Morgan has to do both Pup Academy and school in the same day. At Pup Academy, he just has to walk the dog past different obstacles. And guess which dog is the difficult one? You guessed it, Corazon. Absolutely not. Spark. Honestly, I'm with Fitz. Fire Spark. I'm just kidding. Anyway, it's not Fire Spark. Expel Spark. Anyway, Spark snaps at Morgan and tries to bark, and she does bark at him, which is very nice. She does later, however, getting persuaded by her friends to just accept it. Because she's Spark and she's stubborn. Like I said, this is why I hate Spark. This yet again leads it to be another one of these Spark being center of attention episodes, but it's not quite as bad. Especially since it's dealing with the human school side, where this is the first time Morgan and Izzy meet, and they're partners in a science class. So the teacher is out, and the principal is making Morgan and Izzy cook food. And they end up doing bad the first couple of times, but end up finally just making something. In this episode, the principal walks over, takes a dab of the food, puts it in her mouth, and just kind of like, whoa, that is disgusting. Because Morgan pretty much put dog treats in there, and then they were going to shape them into bones, which then the principal tries yet again and just spits the whole thing out. Overall, I like this episode. It's very interesting, very entertaining, and it's very good. Heck, it made it almost into the top 5. Speaking of which, we are in top 5, with now number 5 going to Corazon. I actually forget the episode name, so I'm just calling it Corazon. That's pretty much the whole episode, well, dog side-wise. Corazon has an injury, so he has to go to school in a cone. And then, of course, Bite and Roddy end up making fun of him because they're Bite and Roddy. And then Corazon has to pretty much deal with life being inside the cone, at least for a day. Even trying to play fetch ball with the cone on. He really hates it until, guess what? Pom Pom, I guess, notices him. So, then he all of a sudden likes the cone and will never take it off, according to him. I really love the pup side. The human side is alright as well. Since this is episode 10, Izzy obviously has been to Pup Academy before, and she really wants to go back. Morgan takes a lot of pictures and shows it to Izzy. And then ends up sending the pictures to Izzy, but accidentally sends it to the school bully, Leon. You know what's really hilarious? Is that I guess this so-called Leon is the person who voices Corazon. It's kind of funny. It's like a weird little family tree in a way. It's a small world, I know. So anyway, Leon ends up getting all the pictures. Morgan deletes them off of his phone, but then they end up saving pretty much everywhere. And then Leon pretty much just tries his absolute best to prove to everybody that this so-called Pup Academy is a real place. And being Leon, the weird guy, of course no one believes him. Charlie ends up finding out about this, so he asks Morgan, hey, what's going on? And this is the episode where Charlie finds out that Izzy's been going to Pup Academy, or at least has been to Pup Academy before. So what happens, Izzy tries to make a video to persuade the people that it's not a real place, and that's exactly what happens. And of course the episode ends with Izzy taking the cone off Corazon. And the whole while, all the pups are saying, Corazon, Corazon. That's why I call it Corazon. It's a good and obviously cute episode. There's one scene in particular where Corazon tries to leave the house at first, which is kind of cringy, but I can look past that and say this is a very good episode. Now, let's move on to number 4, which is Substitute Izzy. This is episode 11, 2 Corazon Saren Detention episodes back to back. You couldn't get any better than this. So Charlie lets Izzy back into Pup Academy because Morgan, I guess, is sick, so she ends up being the substitute. Corazon and Bite try to have a battle to see who can prank the substitute the best. Well, of course, until Corazon realizes that it's his human that's the substitute. He tries to stop, Bite does not want to stop. Eventually, around the end, Izzy ends up finding out that she's getting pranked. First, she thinks it's Corazon. She ends up later finding out that it's Bite. Which I'll talk about that in a moment, because all the meanwhile, we see Charlie and Molly, Morgan's mom, at home seeing who can get Morgan better the fastest. Which ends up being a really hilarious competition between the two. Meanwhile, back at the school, Corazon and Izzy have a little trick up their sleeve to get back at Bite and Roddy. So what they are going to do is to plan out like how Bite would prank Izzy. And by that, I mean Izzy rakes leaves, Bite and Roddy put a, I guess, snake there. Izzy freaks out and falls into the leaves. Charlie notices and makes them help her out, which leads to a fake arm which ends up in Roddy's mouth. Izzy comes out of the leaf pile and scares them both. So, it ends up being really hilarious how that ended up working. And guess what? Izzy ended up being the prank master. Hooray! And the episode ends up with Izzy being allowed back at the school, Morgan feeling better, and then Charlie and Molly catching what Morgan has. Very good episode. This one can get interchanged with Corazon, depending on which episode I feel like is better. Right now, I'm feeling the substitute Izzy. Let's move on to the 3 best episodes of Pup Academy, with number 3 going to The Day of the Stray, aka episode 15. I'm in the, the 3, strong, really passionate and good episodes. So The Day of the Stray follows, of course, after what happened between episodes 12 to 14. Spark ends up coming back to Pup Academy, and everyone is just so cheerful that she's back. It's silly because then everyone pretty much gives Spark whatever the heck she feels like having, even if she doesn't want it. Which actually ends up leading to an episode where Bite is actually nice to Spark for once, and Spark's actually nice to Bite, sort of. But she's Spark, she's never nice. Just kidding. So they start treating her like she's a queen and stuff. And then she's told to just accept it. So that's exactly what she does, and more. That's when she starts demanding stuff, and that part of the episode isn't the best. Because then she just demands everything from all the sweet pups. And you know how I feel about that, right? And then eventually everyone gets upset because Spark is telling them all what to do. Instead of just getting demands, she's pretty much just telling them what to do at this point. So Spark says, hey, how about we just treat everybody normally, huh? And they're like, oh, okay. This episode has Mullen in it, it's automatically a plus. The human side is what really makes this episode great. So Morgan, Izzy, and Wiz's owner James ends up going to the principal's office. And then there's this Teacher's Got Talent thing, which is really hilarious. So can you guess why they went there? Principal wants them to help her win this Teacher's Got Talent. So Morgan ends up getting this disappearing box from Pup Academy, and says the principal can, or not disappearing box, but some sort of like magic box, so that the principal can go in. All before that, the principal tries her talents out, which ends up being hilarious, sort of cringy, but hilarious, because she's horrible at all that stuff. So then, she ends up going in the box during recording, and of course it doesn't go right. So she complains that the box starts feeling really tight, so we can automatically say she's definitely claustrophobic. Then she really starts panicking and takes one of the, I guess, magic swords out, and then she breaks holes in both the ceiling and the side and falls down through the floor. It's sad she didn't win, but hey, she got second place. She did really good. Easily the best principal moment of the show. It's so hilarious. And then eventually, after all that, Morgan ends up going back to Pup Academy, sees Spark, and that's pretty much how the episode ends. Very good episode. Like, I could talk about this episode all day if I wanted to. Let's get to the second best, which is Skunked. This episode, honestly, I really did not like it at all back in the day. When I first watched it, the whole ending scene was just so odd. And of course, I mean the scene where Corazon has the farting competition with the skunks, I guess. It's easily the most cringiest thing in Pup Academy. But hey, if you would skip that, the episode overall is really good. Yeah, the center of attention is still sort of on Spark, but honestly, it's more of Spark teaching Bite a lesson rather than Bite teaching Spark a lesson. Oh yeah, and Bite's in this episode. Plus, 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 plus. So anyway, these skunks, quote-unquote, sneaked into the Pup Academy area, and then all the characters pretty much had to, I guess, as they like to call it, quarantine. That's a word that has changed as the years went on. So, one by one, the pups end up getting sprayed. Sort of. It starts off with Roddy and Wiz, and then later Pom Pom, and then Mullet. So it's pretty much just Spark, Corazon, and Bite later. I like how there's a bunch of different side characters that we don't normally see, like Pom Pom and Bite and Mullet. Speaking of which, Mullet's in this episode, easy plus. And even though Spark and Bite are sort of fighting, the situation that's going on right now kind of keeps them from fighting. And one of the best Bite moments of all time comes from this episode, when Bite actually admits to Spark, that he's the one who let the skunks in. Not only that, but he can't howl either. Aw, poor thing. Because that's when the howling competition was. So he wanted skunks to come in to mess up the whole process, I guess, if you want to call it that. The poor thing looked he was about to cry. The top 10 reasons why Bite is better than Spark, I'm telling ya. The episode ends good with all the pups getting cleaned, and yeah, it's a good episode. I really do enjoy it. But not good enough. There is still one episode that's probably right now my favorite. So here we go. The best episode of Pup Academy is The King Sting. Of course it had to be this episode. What is there not to love about it? Anyway, King and his group finally get captured by Animal Control, aka Clark and Lou. So hooray, they're in this episode, so that's automatically already a plus. So, obviously, as I said, they helped Spark out already in episode 14, and she felt like it was for a good reason. So she wanted to help them out as well. So she got the whole gang, Corazon, Wiz, herself, even Morgan as well, to do some thumb things that the dogs couldn't do, and even Bite. Okay. So basically, they sneak into Clark and Lou's, I guess, home base to try to take King and the group back. Morgan distracts Lou, while Corazon and Wiz distract Clark, as well as a random news lady that comes up as well. So, anyway, they end up, Spark and Bite, and heck, they even end up getting Rico as well, go through these vents to try to find where King and Head and Tail went. All the while, Bite keeps sneezing due to all the dust, and I guess apparently fabric softener as well, which leads to Lou looking around like, huh, what's that? And then this is the first time that Spark and King have pretty much interacted since, like, episode 12. That's a while. This is episode 17, by the way. And this is when we all knew King was actually good now. Because then Morgan pretends that, oh, he's allergic, or he's the one that's sneezing because he's trying to help Bite out a little bit. He bets that, oh, I guess, Lou couldn't sleep in one of the dog kennels. So she goes in, and then Morgan pretends that, oh, his allergies are so bad, closes the door on Lou, and ends up opening all the dog cells up. Clark and Lou do end up catching Rico at the end, but I guess they're going on another adventure now. This episode is pretty perfect. We have Clark and Lou, Bite not even being a bully in this episode, but actually helping out, a much better Rico and King episode. Overall, it's a very good episode. I love it. And heck, Spark finally isn't too annoying, even though the episode is kind of focused on Spark. It's honestly, the main character is everybody in this episode. Everybody has a little bit of something in this episode. And that is the end of Ranking Bub Academy. Whew! That was long, so I hope you all enjoyed this video. I want you all to smash that like button, hit that subscribe button, and get the bell to get all notifications. And I will see you all in the next video. Till next time, bye.